Okay, and then our guest speaker tonight is Sarah Gregory. So, like I said, I watched a webinar with her the other day, and she's just got a wealth of knowledge. She's got a ton of stuff, on Instagram. I believe Sarah is on right now.
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay, I'm gonna make you a co-host. Okay. Okay, Sarah, I will stop sharing and I will just let you take over.
Okay, sounds good. Let me get my screen set up. Did you watch the webinar on Tuesday?
Yeah.
So I didn't realize that one was going to be recorded, and I thought it was going to be super small. And Lauren Enders shared it, and then like 1 million people registered and watched the recording. And these two are going to be very similar. They're a little bit similar, but I was like, I gotta get new examples. So hopefully if you watched on Tuesday, you will still get lots of new information today.
Yeah. It was funny. My director sent it to me. He's like, oh, a webinar on AAC. You should watch it. And I clicked on it. I was like, do you know that that's who's presenting for me Thursday? And he's like, oh, great.
That's so funny. Yes.
But I had to leave early. So I'm sure I will gain more knowledge.
Awesome. All right. So when we chatted about what the group was interested in, we were talking about kind of AAC implementation specifically in the classroom, which is one of my big passions. So I'm more than happy to talk about what AAC looks like in a classroom setting. So my name is Sarah Gregory. I'm a speech pathologist, and I work to support assistive technology, inclusion, and behavior this year. So I do a lot of consulting in my district. We're a public school district. I support pre-K through 12, and our district has a really big mission around inclusive education. So at the elementary level, almost all of our students are in gen ed classrooms to varying degrees throughout the day. And we do have some self-contained settings as we get into secondary, but a lot of what the work that I do is trying to figure out how we can support our students with more complex needs in academics and, with their Common Core standards and things like that. Here's where you can find me. So I'm on social media way more than I should be, but you can find me on Instagram or Twitter. I have a YouTube channel that there's a bunch of stuff about teletherapy and like digital activities that I was big on there in the pandemic. But I haven't made a lot of any YouTube videos in a while. But if you have questions, first of all, feel free to put them in the chat. I'll put the chat window over here on my other monitor. So if you chat in, I'll see it, and I'm happy to take questions as we go. If there's anything else that you need after, please feel free to email me or message me on Instagram. I am happy to share any of the resources I have. I try to make sure everything's linked. If I miss something, let me know. And also, I know you all are a wealth of knowledge. So if there's something that I say that makes you think of like, oh, I did something similar, or here's how you could build on that, I'm happy to just chat and learn from you all too. So this is where you can get the slides. Let me see. I'll just stick it in the chat really quick. And also, I probably have the sharing settings messed up, but I do have some links in the slides, so you might want them just to anyone with the link, so you all can have that. So there are some links. Let me get back to where I am. So that'll let you download a bunch of the things that I'm sharing towards the end when we look at activities. Here's our quick agenda. I know it sounds like a lot of you are all pretty comfortable with AAC, so I have a little bit of a poll when we talk about vocabulary. And so some of the kind of core concepts I'll probably breeze over, and we can look more at examples, digital activities, things that you can take as you go to implement after this. So when we're looking at AAC in schools, we know that the provision of assistive technology is mandated under IDEA. So we know that our students with complex communication needs have to have that technology in order to participate in school. And sometimes we think about, especially our students with more significant needs, like, oh, are they socializing? Can they ask for what they want? But we don't want to look at just meeting communication needs. We also know that AAC is a tool that will let our students access curricular content and engage with it. So I really like to, I don't love the Common Core, but I do like to, as an SLP, I don't have to be as tuned into the Common Core as my teacher colleagues do, but I think it's really important to have a good understanding of what the Common Core standards are in your state. I should have got an example from Missouri, but anyways, I think that this can a lot of times help us. It can help us plan therapy and instruction, and it can also help us advocate for like additional services or devices, things like that. One thing that I like to always mention when we talk about the Common Core is to really look at the students' grade level standards, even if you feel that academically, cognitively, communication levels might be at a lower level than their grade level. We can look at the standards for the actual grade level and then scaffold from there. So if we are looking at this standard that says identify a main topic or central idea, retell key details from a text. That could look, for a student that doesn't need much support, they could meet that standard by telling a nice long narrative or writing it out. But if you have a student who's an emergent communicator, targeting that standard might look like just saying one word. A key detail from the text could be one thing. So how can we kind of scaffold these standards to make them make sense for our students and for their goals? Another thing I like to talk about when we look at the Common Core standards is that sometimes we think about language and that being really part of like ELA, or if there's a writing activity, we can come in and address that. But literacy and language is really the foundation of every single academic skill and Common Core standard. So we cannot meet the standards in science or math if we cannot communicate about them. And that to also say that literacy is also up. It's not just ELA. It's not just reading time. We can really be targeting literacy for our students throughout the entire day and being completely aligned with their standards. So, okay, here's our poll. So this is Slido. If you want to go to slido.com, you can type in that code, or you can take your phone and open the camera app and scan the QR code and just mark any of these things that you feel confident with and could maybe explain to somebody else. So like core and fringe vocabulary, I totally got that. You could teach me about it. Tiers of vocabulary, looking at the 3 tiers of vocabulary, and also the descriptive teaching model. So if you have all of those, mark all 3. If you have 1 or 2, mark the ones that you feel really confident in. And then I kind of skip over some things. Give it a minute to come in. Six people. And there's going to be, this is one of 3 Slido interactions. So if you have it pulled up, I think you'll be ready for the next ones. So pretty much everybody, 100%, we know core and fringe. Perfect. Tiers of vocabulary we can talk a bit about. And then definitely we're going to dive into descriptive teaching. The beginning, I'll kind of go over these foundations, and then we'll talk, all my examples will kind of integrate descriptive teaching. So hopefully you'll leave feeling like pretty confident in what that is and what that might look like. So we don't really need to talk about core and fringe. We just need to know that, the majority of what we say are this small subset of core words. And then we also have fringe words that can be super important, but are not used very flexibly. And a lot of times I've found when I support students in academic settings that we really want to go to this like academic vocabulary and fringe vocabulary. And so I'll go into a science lesson and they're like, okay, I need you to program in like insidious rocks or what, I don't even know the names of the rocks. And I'll say, okay, but what do they care about this? Are they ever going to say this again? Is this going to be important in the future? But sometimes that's the easiest for some adults to kind of conceptualize of like, how can I include this student who has really significant needs? I know I'll put in all these nouns that are related to this lesson, and that will get them to participate. Okay, so now we have tiers of vocabulary. I know this is something that's talked about in academics, in speech therapy, outside of just AAC, but it's kind of this idea that the Tier 1, these sort of like first words that we are learning and using are going to be these core words. And as we know, I saw everybody vote, we know that these are words that we want to model on our AAC devices. We know this is really best practice in AAC support. Tier 2 is going to be academic vocabulary, but it's vocabulary that's used across subjects. And this can be a really good place to focus instruction for students that already have a strong foundation in core. If you have a student who's really emergent and does not have that strong foundation, then I would be not putting in a lot of these Tier 2 vocabulary words. I see this, like, I'm all over SLP Instagram, and I see a lot of SLPs, again, not specific to AAC, talk about students with specific language disorders working here in this Tier 2 area to kind of build up vocabulary. Then we have Tier 3, and these are really specific academic words that are used in different subjects. So when we come across a word that's in Tier 3, what we want to do with our students is focus on receptive understanding of the words. So do we have to program in all of these Tier 3 words and teach our students where to find them and the motor plans for them? No, but does that mean that these words are not important for them, that they, you don't need to know any nouns in order to participate in this lesson? Again, no, they need to understand what these high level concepts are, and we can ask them we can explain it receptively. We can show videos, we can show pictures, we can tell them, say it in your head, and we can also model the spelling of the word on the keyboard. I'm going to talk a bit about what that could look like later, so that really when a student becomes a proficient user of AAC, the way that they'll most likely interact with these Tier 3 vocabulary words is by spelling, unless it's something that they use really, really frequently, or there might be something specific on their device. Otherwise, if it's like onomatopoeia or something like that, and that comes up in conversation, they're probably going to spell that word rather than having it programmed into their device. So when we look at these Tier 2 and 3 words, I know for myself that when I started supporting AAC, maybe like 10 years ago, I was definitely in Noun Town. I thought devices had to be programmed specifically for every activity. I would do like a cooking activity and be programming in like chocolate chips, flowers, and I just was like focused on nouns. Then when I learned about core vocabulary, my pendulum swung so far in the other direction. I was like, never say a fringe word to me. Like, I can't hear it. Just describe it. Use a core word. And so I really have had to find like a happy medium there of when, and be thoughtful about when to program in fringe words. So saying like 20% of what we say is fringe, that means that we have to be thoughtful about what we're programming in. And if we are taking up a precious cell on our student's communication device, we want to make sure that it's going to be used repeatedly, and that it's something that's important to them and not just something that's important to their teacher or important to a specific lesson. So one thing that pushed my thinking forward really nicely in this area was working with one specific student whose parents were really pushing back on against a core word approach. And I just kept kind of being like, no, we need to do core. How is he going to get to spontaneous novel utterance generation? But then when once I slowed down and truly sat down and listened to them and what their concerns were and what they knew about their child that I didn't know, we worked together to come up with this protocol for adding new words. Because what had happened with him in the past was that every new word there was no thought to it. It was just going to be programmed in the device. And then he had pages and pages and pages of words that he didn't know how to use and didn't need and probably didn't want. And so this is a Word document that we won't dive too much into, but you can see that if you click it, that links to it. If anybody wants to kind of check this out a little bit more. Again, this was specific to a student, so I'm not saying go use this with all your students, but you might use it as a template or it could help some decision making of, why and when we're going to program core words, and just sort of like a thought process of, if there's not a word, what are we going to do? We're going to search for the word, double check that it's not there. We're going to use first letter cueing, which I'll talk about more later. Continue to model core words, but then also we can add the button if we feel like we need to. So there's that if you want to look at that more after. There we go. So now let's get into the descriptive teaching model. So working in the schools, I have found, I mean, I do a lot of I take in a lot of professional development in AAC, and there's like a lot of different strategies and ways to do things. And I have really found that just the descriptive teaching model is one strategy that has been super, super effective in me helping my students be engaged in the classroom and the learning there. So what this model is it's something that was really created by Gail Van Tatenhove. I'm citing this article from 2009. So there's a whole article that she wrote, and then there's this really nice one-page handout. I guarantee you it's linked in here somewhere, but I can't tell you where. If you can't find it, I'll email it. So there's a nice one-page handout on Saltillo's website that it describes the descriptive teaching model and gives like a visual, like a chart, just to kind of help understand it. So the idea behind this model is that there's limited real estate on an AAC device. So we all understand that, right? That if we were just going to program in every single vocab word that the teachers gave to our students from kindergarten through 12th grade, the system would become a mess. There's just not enough cells, and it would become really difficult to navigate. We also all know that most of what we say is core vocabulary. So what we can do with that information is we can describe academic concepts using our frequently used core words. So we don't have to say avalanche in order to describe what an avalanche is, and in order to interact with the content and be a part of a lesson. So we also all can imagine that many content words are not used outside of the actual academic lesson. So like a real life example was one year when I was working in pre-K, they actually hatched like real baby chicks. They had them in like an incubator. It was like super, super fun. And what they really were focused on was some animals are oviparous and some animals are viviparous. So all these little 5-year-olds who are speaking were going home and saying these like big words. The parents were like so impressed. And so the teacher was like, you have to program viviparous and oviparous onto all these students' devices. And I was like, I don't even know what that means. What are you asking me to program in? And like this kid independently uses like 10 words, and you want me to put in oviparous, which means born from an egg. Viviparous is not born from an egg. But anyways, I can understand why teachers kind of go there and like, oh, okay, this is my lesson. This is what I'm focusing on for everybody. So again, we can expect that receptive understanding of what oviparous is. So like, let's watch a video and let's think about, okay, so this animal is coming out of an egg. So remember, anybody that comes out of an egg is going to be oviparous, and we can sort and things like that. We can completely expect our students who have complex needs to understand these academic concepts, but you don't have to program a button in order to teach the concept. So here's just some examples of these tier 3 more academic, higher level academic words, and the tier 1 and 2 vocabulary words that we can use to describe them. So instead of saying humor, we can say funny, joke, happy. Instead of saying herbivore, we could describe it as an animal that eats plants. Instead of erosion, we can talk about how dirt falls away from wind and water. So if we focused on programming in tier 3 words, we're going to be spending also a lot of time on programming. And I imagine that none of you have additional time to spend programming devices. And really the point is, we'll look at the chart of the different types of questions that we ask, but a lot of times the reason we're programming in tier 3 words is so that students can answer our questions. And so simply answering questions doesn't necessarily mean that we're engaging in the lesson. So instead, what we can do is, and all of these these words, descriptors are coming from like the Common Core. So these are words that you're going to find in the Common Core. And so we can really show that our practice is being linked to their education as a whole. So we can ask our students to describe and define, compare and contrast, question, offer examples, comment and discuss. So this is something I'm going to talk about Canva later on in this session, but this is just like a little graphic I got from Canva to do some comparing and contrasting. And so if we're going to talk about marine life, I could program in scales, fins, and there's not a ton of like higher level words, right? But I could also program in like specific words that might not need to be used again. We're probably going to have fish on most of our devices, but let's look at what are the similarities and differences. Like whales have hair, and no, fish don't have hair, and shrimp don't have hair, but shrimp have legs. Fish don't have legs and whales don't have legs, but you know what? They all have fins. So again, fin might be one word that's not on your device, but these are things we can talk about to help build that receptive understanding. And then also a lot of these words are going to be found on most robust communication devices. So I really like this chart, which is from that article by Gail Van Tatenhove, and there's a nice representation of this chart on that one pager as well. And so what she talks about is these two different types of questions that we ask our students. So we have referential style questions and descriptive style questions. And I can tell you most of what I hear in classrooms and even my own education, most of it was this referential style. For example, that would be, what is the effect of extreme cold on a liquid? And so the answer is it freezes. So there's really only one way to answer that question and one way to be successful there, rather than asking a descriptive style question, which might be, what does it mean for something to evaporate? So there's a lot of different ways we could think about that and answer that question. So it's something that changes. You go from one way to another, go away. A lot of these are core vocabulary words, and they're words that students already have on their devices. They're words that have hopefully been modeled before, and that so it might make it easier for them to communicate about these content, these subjects, which we know is needed based on looking at those Common Core standards. We know our students can't just push a button that says freezes or point to a picture that says freezes. We want to make sure that they can communicate about these topics. So we're going to practice really quick us using the descriptive teaching model on our Slido. And so we're going to describe, like an example that Gail Van Tatenhove uses a lot is, if you said to me that you were asking for something and said curved yellow fruit, I could probably narrow that down and guess that it's a banana. So even though it might not be, it sometimes can be hard to think about, like, okay, how would I describe something? We usually can use core vocabulary to describe to somebody what it is that we're talking about. So let's get on the Slido, and we're going to use the hurricane example. So if you go again to slido.com or you scan that QR code, you just give a one-word example, and you can give multiple words, but if you give them one at a time, this is going to create a word cloud. So I think it'll work better if we just do one word at a time. So windy, yeah. And think about words that would be on your student's device, and words that could be used across subjects or could be used, weather, rainy, storm. Wet is a great one. Fast. Yeah, perfect. And so like you can think about fast, that's a word that's not related to weather at all. Scary. Yes, totally. But that's a word that we can talk, if that's what your student says is fast, and then we go out to recess, like, oh, remember you said hurricanes are fast, now you can run fast, and we can start like really building solid concepts of these different words. And I love scary too, because we can talk about, we want to make things as tangible as we can for our students. So like, what would it feel like to be in a hurricane? Do you want to watch a video of someone watching a hurricane from their house rather than just the radar of a hurricane? Let's get different perspectives of it. So my 5-year-old, oh my gosh, needs to get a kiss. Okay, so here's we're going to watch this video, a clip from a keynote speech that Karen Erickson did. So we're going to talk a bit about how literacy can also really nicely coincide with this descriptive teaching model. So I'm not going to talk a ton about literacy in this session because I feel like that's just such a huge subject. But the book Comprehensive Literacy Instruction for All, which I'm sure you're all familiar with, by Karen Erickson, is something that I have really used to improve and guide my literacy instruction for my students with complex needs. And I just absolutely love Karen Erickson, and I love listening to everything she has to say. And so in this video, she talks about how we all have a receptive expressive lexical gap. So we all understand a lot more words than we can use, and that's typical. So I know that this family that I like made that Word document with, they really felt like all the other students have this expectation of saying these high level academic words, and you don't have that expectation for my student. And I said, no, we want him to understand these words. I also just don't want to bog down his system with a lot of things that that he might not care about talking about in the future. So we can receptively teach the words without adding them to the device. So that doesn't mean we ignore these words like, oh, brontosaurus. You don't need to understand the difference between a triceratops and a brontosaurus. We'll just say dinosaur and call it good. No, we can use the word dinosaur, and then we can describe the difference between a brontosaurus versus a triceratops. We also can, if we're looking at supporting literacy, use first letter cueing, which I think is a really great, easy, manageable strategy to use. So what that means is first letter cueing is just pushing the first letter of the word on the keyboard. And Karen Erickson will explain more about this in the clip that we're about to watch. But basically, it's just modeling for our students. The word barometer is not in your device. Remember, you can picture a barometer. Remember, it's an instrument that measures the weather. It measures, I think, like the weight of the rain in the air. I'm not even sure. So you don't have this word on your device. If you want to say this word, keyboard B, barometer starts with B. So if a student is maybe is a more advanced at spelling, you might spell the whole word. But for my students who are at an emergent literacy level, who are still learning letter names and letter sounds, I'm just going to model the first letter. And what this is doing is modeling the concept for them again and again, that when you don't have a word, you go to your keyboard and you can spell it. So the keyboard is a tool. Literacy is important, and this is really the skill that's going to give you the power to communicate about anything you want, whenever you want, to whoever you want. So this link is going to give you the full YouTube video of Karen Erickson's keynote speech. If you haven't watched it, I've watched it multiple times. I absolutely love it, and we're going to just watch this one clip. Let me know if you can hear it.
One of the areas that's, I think, particularly interesting to us as the AAC community is the area of research that looks at children who are 5 years old. So they have not started formal education in reading and writing yet. They, probably have learned some letters and things, but they haven't had formal reading and writing instruction yet. And they've looked at children who are pre-linguistically deaf, who have been using sign language as their primary expressive communication, receptive and expressive. And if they've been growing up in homes with parents who also are native users of American Sign Language, those children, by the time they are 5 years old, are attempting to fingerspell as much as 10% of the time. They don't even know how to spell anything yet, but they understand the value of fingerspelling in order to support them in communicating whatever they want, whenever they want, to whomever they want, because they've seen this model throughout their lives.
So isn't that really cool to think about, that these children who don't know how to spell are just basically using invented spelling because they know that spelling words is what fills that receptive expressive gap. So if we think about modeling for our students, even if they don't know any letters or any letter sounds, we're just modeling the concept that the keyboard is what you use to fill that receptive expressive gap. I think that can be really powerful for our students, and it can also really help build those emergent literacy skills of letter names and sounds. Now this is going to play again and stop. Okay, so AAC modeling. I know, I'm imagining that everybody already is pretty solid with the fact that we need to model, we need to use aided language input, but I'm just putting this in here as we think about using the descriptive teaching model. Of course, we're going to be thinking about words that can be used to describe these tier 3 vocabulary words. And then we're of course going to be modeling them. And I think that some of these sort of like best practices really go along with that nicely too, that we don't want to be using AAC to quiz and test. We don't want to just be looking at requesting. The descriptive teaching model is looking at describing. And so we're not going to get stuck in this sort of just like, what do you want phase. We want to make it as fun and as easy as possible, which I know we're talking about classroom support here. We're talking about academics. And this is something where at times where I get stuck is that academics are not always super fun, but as fun as we can make it. And I'll show some ideas of like using GIFs and things like that to help us kind of like conceptualize some of these academic concepts. And as we're using the descriptive teaching model, all these best practices apply, like giving wait time and things like that. And I always say, if it's stressful, don't push it. Okay, so we're going to look quickly at curriculum modifications. I don't know what is going on. I have to click like 3 times. Okay, so here's an example of using the descriptive teaching model to describe idioms. So this was like, I think, a 2nd or 3rd grade lesson. And what we will do using the descriptive teaching model is define what the individual idioms mean using core vocabulary. And we could ask these open-ended questions of like, what do you think it means? And so that a question like that, what do you think it means? Any student in the class, as long as they can initiate touching their communication device, any student can be successful with that. So if we think about the student who needs the least amount of support, the student's really solid on idioms, they already are familiar with all of them, and they give you the definition, great. Or a student can touch a word and it could be random, it could be an accident, but it still, we could say, oh, it makes you think of that. Okay, that's interesting. Like, let's think more about that as we look at the actual definition. So it's a way for all, when we ask these descriptive style questions, we can allow all students, no matter what their level, to interact with the content in a similar way. My watch thinks I'm talking to them. So you can see that these idioms, I just picked one core vocabulary word that was already programmed. This example is just using speak for yourself. So a word that was already programmed on speak for yourself that we could model. So if the idiom is you're in hot water. Okay, so what does that make you think of? You're in hot water. And someone might say tea. Like, okay, it doesn't have to do with that. It means that like you're in trouble. Maybe you did something bad. I might not know where trouble is on the device. So we're going to pick bad and model bad. So a trick that I really love using is to look up the dictionary definitions of word like avalanche, for example. I might be like, okay, how exactly am I going to describe this? And this is something you can do alongside your students of just type in the word avalanche, and you'll be pleasantly surprised that the dictionary definition of a lot of these words have core words, or will give you some ideas of some words to model that can make it a little bit easier for you. So for example, instead of asking this referential question of what is this, we can say, tell me about beaver dams. And so we could say, all right, we cut down trees. The dam stops water. It's calm water. It makes big water. So these are all the, using these tier 1 core vocabulary words to describe these higher level, more specific concepts. All right, now we're going to get into the fun stuff, the digital activities, and some more implementation ideas. So I love using digital resources. Canva is like my new favorite. So we're going to talk a bunch about Canva. I like that we can be really flexible with making things. And let's say we are talking about an avalanche. I might not have it in my textbook or in any of the books in the classroom, but we can really quickly go on YouTube and look up, like, let's just watch this video. And then I can ask, what did you notice? So we're not going to watch a video and say, what is this event called? And then the only people that can be successful with that referential question are the kids that know the word avalanche. But every single student in a classroom at all varying ability levels could watch a video of an avalanche. And I could say, what did you notice? And they could probably interact some way with it. Even if they're super, super emergent and they say something that's seemingly unrelated, we can say, okay, thanks. Thanks for your feedback. And let's think about how that might fit. And I also, I still love using digital activities, even post teletherapy and post pandemic, because I like to bring my iPad. We have computers, smart boards. I feel like it's pretty, easy to continue to use these. They're easily adaptable, and we can really customize to student interests. So again, how do we make academics fun? I do not always succeed at that, and I don't always have an answer to that. But I think sometimes putting things in a digital context or pulling in interests whenever you can can make things really fun. We also want to think about, for anybody who's working with older students, that these digital materials can sometimes help us find things that are more age respectful for our students. And so when we talk about being age respectful, we want to just think about their actual chronological age, and also think about what their peers are interested in, and try to expose them to things that match their age. Well, again, this is a quote from Kate Ahern, and if you click on her name, it links to a blog post where she talks more about this, and I really like her perspective. She says, we're not going to judge students for choosing to return to old activities or materials, or choosing to engage with things that we might perceive as, for somebody who's younger, it's really, we want to avoid the judgment, but we also want to make sure that when we are bringing materials into a classroom, that we're not just bringing in like a picture book about different weather events that was maybe written for preschoolers. We can use real life pictures, and we could create this in something in Google Slides where the text might match a more emergent level, but the pictures are real life photographs, so it doesn't look like it's necessarily for younger students. I really like this, again, as another blog post from Jane Farrell, where she lists some really nice picture books that are a little bit more age respectful for older students. So we've talked a bit about literacy. So we're going to dive into this resource, the PRC Literacy Planner, which, if you are not familiar with this is one of my absolute favorite resources. Has anybody, you can put in the chat if you've used the Literacy Planner before. So they have hard copies of them. If you ask your PRC or Saltillo consultants, they could probably send you one. I like to have the hard copies, but they're also, all of them are available for free. And so a lot of the literacy planners are picture books and are kind of geared more towards younger students, but they have one, this I think is called like the book club one. And if you click this picture on the slides, it'll take you to the whole planner that has 10 books. That these ones are for older students. And luckily last year I was supporting only secondary students, and a couple of these books like naturally came up in the curriculum, which was nice. So they're like popular books that might already be used in the curriculum. Okay, so my slides are being weird. Nope, that's not what I wanted. Sorry. Okay, so this book we dove into hard last year. This was what we did in like the last 2 months of school, and we got so much mileage therapy-wise out of this book. We had a blast. So this is a page of the literacy planner. And so part of it is that students can like think about what books they might be interested in reading, because that's a big part of literacy, right? Of like helping students get interested and engaged in reading and self-select books. So we were doing this as a group, and so we could vote on books. So there's places where you can read like a little snippet of, there's like it's called like a book tasting or something like that. And then the kids can vote. And so every single book, there's 10 books in the planner, has a QR code to watch the trailer. So again, I love to not plan. I really am not very planful in my therapy, and anything I can do on the fly is perfect. So one day I just was like, I have this planner. I don't even know, like, what would I even do with this? Brought it into therapy. I'm like, all right, I don't have to even Google what the trailers are. I'm just using the QR code and pulling them up on my iPad. So we watched some different movie trailers, which was super fun. And then every single book has this QR code that links you to Tar Heel Reader and links you to an abridged version of the book. Because again, in my speech therapy, I'm not necessarily reading an entire chapter book with my students. But what was really cool is I had, I think, 3 students in my group, and it was the students that needed the most support with communication and literacy. And we read the Tar Heel Reader version. We watched the trailer. I'm going to show you everything that we did. And then the classroom teacher was like, wait, you guys are doing Holes? I love that book. So then the last few weeks of school, he read Holes to the whole class. And my students who needed the most support really engaged with it, because they were they're already familiar with it, so they could engage with it more similarly to their peers, which was super fun. If you are newer to supporting literacy or to supporting AAC, or even if you want to give this to a classroom teacher, it's beautiful. They talk about what to do before reading, what to do during reading. Beth Waitlefever is the person who makes these, and I just think she's an absolute genius. So this is an example of the Tar Heel Reader book for Holes. So if you're not familiar with Tar Heel Reader, it is a free online resource that's out of the Center for Literacy and Disability Studies, where Karen Erickson, that's where her research comes out of. So this is, I'm not sure if her or who exactly created Tar Heel Reader, but it's part of their whole kind of group and their work. So you can see that they used real life photographs, so it can kind of help the students visualize what's happening in the book. And then there's just simplified text. So it's all chapter summaries. And so we could get through like a handful of chapters each session. I'm telling you, we got so much mileage. And you can see that there's just some simplified text. My students were not at the level where they were reading this independently, but this could also be really nice, a nice way to scaffold supports where some students might be reading the book independently. Maybe some people have the audio book, and some people could be reading this abridged version, which I think is really nice. Here's again just like more ideas and information on this from this literacy planner. So they talk about building background knowledge, what you can do. Watch the trailer. They each book they talk about having like a grab bag of items, so you have some physical items that can help connect to the book. And then what do you do when you're getting ready to read? There's like a section of what to do while you're reading. So it walks you through some of these awesome strategies like CAR and things that are talked about in comprehensive literacy, where this has been new. Supporting literacy with my students with complex needs is honestly new to me within the last maybe like 4 or so years. And so I still feel like I need some scaffolding. And so it's nice to think like, okay, make a comment. So what would it be? It takes a lot of hard work. And then you can see these core words are nice and bolded, so we can think about what to model. And also this could be a really nice thing to pass on to staff who you're supporting. So what I did, because I'm obsessed with Google Slides and I love to make things that are shareable to other people so that my work actually is more useful than just my one therapy time. So I did a lot of extension activities for just this book for Holes in Google Slides. And so in the literacy planner, this is from the planner, they have this character trait map. So Stanley Yelnats is the main character. And after we read the book or during reading, we can talk about like, let's list some traits. So what's a character trait? Let's give some examples. Let's maybe watch a clip on YouTube of the movie Holes, and that can help us think about some things. All of this stuff that I'm showing you is linked. You can take it and make a copy of it and use it if you like to. So we're going to do our character traits. Then this is super fun. A big part of the book is that they have, a lot of the characters have nicknames. And so after we did the character trait map and got an idea of some different character traits, we did this nickname generator. And so you put in your name and then you do 3 adjectives. So then I said, well, what are your character traits? And what was really fun is I was doing this with students who are, again, at a more emergent communication level. We put in nouns for this too, and nouns worked. So they like made funny nicknames, and there's like rhyming nicknames there. It was pretty hilarious. I would say to caution you about doing this with younger students, because I think that like if they're, there's a suggest and like sexy is one of them or something like that. So there might be some like older vocab. But anyway, so this was a fun way to talk about some different adjectives or things to describe you, things that you like. And so then we did a name scramble. So we did this little literacy activity because I don't want to ruin the book for you. But part of it is that Stanley's his last name is his first name spelled backwards. So like that's super funny. So I did this in Jamboard, which I have it open here. So So I put my student's name. So I would put for my name, I'd put SARAH, and then I'd say, spell it backwards. So then we can be moving these around and spelling them backwards. Or are there any other words that you can spell with your name? Oh, I can spell at, or I can spell sat with Stanley's name. So this is just like a fun little literacy activity that's connected to a theme from the book. And then I just put together some questions to kind of create discussion, and tried to make them more descriptive style than referential style. And what I really, really loved about this unit, you can tell I had a lot of fun doing this, but as I went through, I did this book, I did The Borrowers, I did another book with another student, and I was like, wait a minute, all these books are about literacy and like learning to read, because there's a character in this book who doesn't know how to read, and Stanley teaches him how to read. And so I asked my PRC consultant, and I was like, wait, is there a theme of literacy in the literacy planner? And she said, yes, Beth did that on purpose. And I was like, this is just beautiful. So one of my students who was in high school did not want to learn to read. So last year I was like, we're going to work on letter names and letter sounds. And he was like, absolutely not. And I was like, don't you want to learn to text? No. Do you want to learn to search things yourself on YouTube? Nope, don't care. Do you want a phone like your brother has? Nope. And I was like, oh my gosh, how can I like make this exciting for this student? So this was just, it was a nice, especially as our students who are older, who are still in that emergent phase, it's nice to have a character that you can relate to. Zero doesn't know how to read either. What made him want to learn to read and write? Why was it important? Because in the book, it's really important. He wanted to like write to his mom. And so, so this was just sort of like another layer on it that we could use some of these descriptive questions, think about why literacy is important, and then also be able to target those explicit skills like manipulating letters to make different words, things like that. So we talked about Tar Heel Reader. So that is, again, it's a website that has books that anybody can write. And so it's open source. Anyone can write a book. Like I never have, but I could write a book and put it on there. And so this author Read a Book is like the pen name of David Koppenhaver, who's another co-author of the book Comprehensive Literacy for All. And he writes really funny books. These, I would say the ones I'm going to show you are for older students, but there's lots of stuff. If we're talking about weather events and we're talking about hurricanes, you could probably type in hurricane and find a book on Tar Heel Reader. The really nice thing about it is that this book is content for older students, but the literacy level is at an emergent level. So that makes it really nice. So this book is hilarious. It's called Oh Ship. And I put this in the wrong place. Shoot, let's read Oh Ship and I'll go back to that. Okay. Deep ship, hot ship. So you can see there's like bullship. It's very funny. So if you want to look up any of David's books, search Read a Book as an author and then choose any rating. You have to, because you can see these are a little like PG-13, and that will get you this homophone book, big damn book. You can see his sense of humor is super funny. Jane Farrell, who had that list of books for older students, is also an author on here, and I think she is awesome. So this is another idea of kind of some classroom integration ideas. This is an idea that I got from Kate Ahern. She posted this like during the pandemic, and I made this specifically for a student when we were doing teletherapy, but I think this can be like a fun way for students to more independently interact with a book check-in. So let's say we are reading Holes. I could create one of these for Holes and just say, okay, everybody go on your devices and do your book check-in and let me know what you think about the book. So this is a Google form. And there is a lot you can do with Google Forms. I haven't even really, this is maybe my next frontier. So I made this years ago for this book, The $1 Million Shot. And so what Kate Ahern did was she put these questions in, but then she also put some visual supports. So did you like it? Yes or no? Who was your favorite character? And if we're doing Holes, maybe we could do just actual clips of the movie. Then we have a little quiz about a vocabulary word, but instead of saying giving a description and saying, okay, what does that mean? And students having to come up with fantasize, we're using these visual supports to kind of scaffold it for our students who need more support. And let's see what picture describes fantasize. Okay, like, well, basketball, that can happen in real life. That might not be a fantasy. Sleeping, like, oh, look at that. Can that be real life? Maybe that's the fantasy. And again, students could just engage in this independently if they wanted to. What's the setting of the book? This is referential, so got me there. And then there's, you know, if you have any other questions, which some students might be able to put something in there or maybe not, but I just thought this was like a fun idea where you can actually insert images into a Google form. So let's check our time. We're doing pretty good. We did Target Reader. Okay, now let's talk about Canva. So I absolutely love Canva. Oh, okay, yeah, Target Reader is great. I'm looking at the chat. So Canva is probably most of us have heard of it, right? It's an online graphic design tool. Like, this is where I make my Instagram posts and things like that, but it also can be super fun for therapy and also super fun for connecting to the curriculum. So any educator, if you have a .edu email address, you can get the pro version of Canva for free, which gives you more pictures, more tools, the remove background tool. It's amazing. So I had logged in with like my other email address, and if you don't have an EDU, you can put your other email, like a Gmail address, and ask them to verify you. I was never able to go through that process. So then I was like, why am I not just using my school email? But anyways, that then if you already have another one, there's a way to link them. I'm happy to talk more about that via email, but here are some fun things that you can find on Canva. And this, like, you know, I'm kind of talking digital here, but you could also easily print these things out and use them with students, but you know, it's kind of a fun twist on a worksheet. So you can search worksheets, like you can go on Canva and search vocabulary worksheets. And there a lot of different templates will show up. So there are like a lot of really cool things that we can use for school. That again, I feel like I haven't even scratched the surface. I don't have an example here, but there's also like Jamboard backgrounds. So you can like download an image and upload it to Jamboard, and it's just like, it'll be a nice way, like a want to know chart, things like that. So as we're talking about vocabulary and describing what different higher level words mean, we can use this little vocabulary worksheet. And you can do lots of fun things. You can, for students who are at an emergent literacy level, we could use some pictures. We could put a picture of SAD. We can change the fonts. We can use real pictures or clip art, and kind of talk through things like right here, we're describing what the word lonely means. So it can just be sort of add a little bit more fun. If all we're doing is like looking up definitions to vocabulary words, this might be more fun than just sort of like say it in your head and listen to the definition. Here is an example of a worksheet for science. And another fun thing about Canva is that any of this can be edited. So this is exactly how the template came when I searched for it. And then I took it and made some different edits. So if we're talking about science, like we talked about earlier with the question from Gail Van Tatenhove of tell me one of the examples was name the 3 states of matter. So in order for a student to do that, name the 3 states of matter, they have to say solid, liquid, gas. Those words are probably not on our students' devices. So I really like how this already was set up of our favorite states of matter. So food is solid. So let's talk about your favorite food. Your favorite food is cheeseburgers? That's a solid. Picture a cheeseburger. That's solid. Now picture your favorite drink. What do you like to drink? Water. Okay, water is a liquid. Then let's talk about smell. And there's other things we can do to edit these worksheets or kind of scaffold things. Like the following organisms from the animal kingdom live in my house is what the worksheet comes with. So if we don't, maybe our students don't understand what organisms mean, but we could say, how can we tell if something's living? Like if something's alive or something's not alive, like this table is not alive, it's not moving. Something that's living, it's moving, it's breathing. So what things that are alive are in your house? Who lives in your house? Do you have pets? So there's just some different things we can do to kind of build the understanding of these concepts without having to use those referential style questions. Another fun thing that I do all the time in Canva is just like make silly pictures with my students. So if we're doing that lesson about beaver dams, then I can say, all right, I'm going to pull up a picture of a beaver dam. And you know what students really also love is pictures of themselves. And so this is just a clip art, stock photo kid from here, from Canva, but you could put in a picture of your actual student. You could put in their favorite characters and say, if Grogu was here at the beaver dam, what would he be doing? And we could maybe say, oh, he would help the beaver. How would he help? The trees were growing, and how did they fall down? You might use a saw if you were going to help, but how did the beavers do it? And we can kind of build that understanding. And there's so many fun tools. We could do a session all about Canva, but I really love this remove background. Oh, of course, I can't do it because I'm on my personal Gmail. But anyways, if I was signed in under my school one, the background just fades away, and then we would have Grogu to like move around and be in this fun scene with us. And you can see all these different elements. There's shapes, graphics, there's photos, videos are another really fun thing. Like if I said sawing and went to videos, then I could say, okay, yeah, let's put this video of sawing in here. And let's pretend that you're here sawing this tree down. So that can kind of make things more fun and interactive, and also help kind of picture some more abstract concepts. Oops. Okay. So another fun activity that I made with my students that was just sort of a language activity that didn't necessarily have to do with academics was this would you rather game. So this was something that everybody could kind of participate in, and we created these together. So again, I do not like to plan therapy, and so we just made this as a therapy activity, and I was able to scaffold it for some different levels of students. And one student really didn't like coming up with them, so we just had him answer them. I was like, what would you rather do? And he could even just point to what one he would like to choose. We have like, I don't know, would you rather be a dog walker or a construction worker? We just did pictures there, but then we also were doing a weather unit. So this did tie into some of the other stuff we were doing. You can see on this one, we did videos to make it a little bit more fun and engaging and show that example. Another fun thing on Canva, I got this idea from my friend Ashley Laracy, who is the queen of emergent literacy, specifically with older students. So I get lots of ideas from her, and she likes to do these acrostic poems, which Canva has tons of them. So this one's like winter, like let's describe winter using a W word, windy. But she also does them a lot with students' names. So Canva has these like cute, fun templates, and then I could just delete all these words and put in like SARAH, and then we could describe you like after we do our character map. All right, now let's do an acrostic poem, and you're going to describe yourself with an S word, with an A word. So again, just some more fun things that we can do on Canva. We're running a little bit low. Okay, we're almost done. GIFs are something that's really fun. So similar to how you could pull in videos on Canva, students have a fun time like using GIFs and describing, using core words to describe them. So this is thinking back to that idiom activity. So, okay, we know cool as a cucumber means relaxed. But if I'm saying picture the word relaxed, can our students do that? All right, let's look up some images of people being relaxed. So this hedgehog, he's very relaxed. He's not stressed. He doesn't have anywhere to be. Let's look at somebody else who might be relaxed. How would you look if you were relaxed? When do you feel relaxed? So that can just be a nice way to continue to build an understanding of these concepts. I love this Chrome extension, Giphy. You can also just like Google image search different GIFs, but this is a Chrome extension that I have it installed. You can just type in, and again, this is another warning that there are some things in here that might not be 100% appropriate for school. I have not come across anything horrible, but maybe like some punching, things like that, that I might not want to pull up in a class. So just be forewarned about that you might want to have it set up ahead of time. Okay, I think videos always help. So let's watch a video. This is an example from teletherapy, but this is just an example of how I've used GIFs in therapy, and then we'll be almost done.
Okay, that's my last one. of those Star Wars things. So we could make more of these if you want to look for one. You could help me make some more, or we could read the Spider-Man book. So you want to read or do more of the Star Wars? Watch. So do more of the ones we can watch? Okay, so let's go. Let's get another one. Do you want me to look for a specific character this time? Okay, who should we look for? Grogu? Yes, good idea, good idea. Okay. Oh, there he is. What? Let me see. Oh, this one's funny. We can do a couple different ones of Grogu because he's the best. So what is he doing in this one that we should say? Cool. That's what I was thinking. Nice. So let's get sit. Take a picture of it. And then we'll remember how to get there next time. And this will also help my other kids find different words on their device. So thank you. Here we go. Sit, Grogu. So cute.
So you can see I'm always making things as I'm doing them. This was during the pandemic when I was like making a lot and sharing things out. So I had this pre-made and then he wanted to keep doing it. So I was like, we'll just make more and I'm just gonna keep screenshotting. And so that program that I was using was the new Voice Pass software where you can do the write with icons. If it's something you're interested in, let me know. I'll show you how to do it. I can email you a video on that, which I like just to get kind of screenshots of icons, especially as other people might be supporting our students who aren't as familiar with the motor plans. This is in the slide deck, this bit.ly Gregory slides activities. I've made this a long time ago, this Wakelet, but I try to keep adding things. So this is just a bunch. There's like that GIF activity that I'm making is in there. There's the music choice board. There's a bunch of different like Google Slides activities that it'll force a copy and you can make a copy of those and use them in your therapy if you want. And we're skipping right over peer support. Feel free to look at those slides if you're interested. And my final thought is to keep it simple. So I know I shared a lot. And I often am guilty of looking at the way other people do things and being like, oh my gosh, I have so much to learn. I need to like practice descriptive teaching and I need to log into Canva. I always say like, just pick one thing. All these resources are here. I'm here. If you want to just be like, I'm going to learn Canva and then I'm going to explore Tar Heel Reader, that you can keep these slides as a resource and don't feel like you need to do everything. Start slow. If you've never used descriptive teaching, start with your easiest student and see how it goes and see how it becomes easier. And try not to stress or overwhelm yourself. So we're kind of out of time. If you have questions, I'm happy to answer them. Like I said, you can also reach out after this via email or on Instagram or something. That's all we got. Perfect timing.
Thank you so much, Sarah. I did have one question. So I know like I'm working with a student right now who you know, he's using an AAC device, and I feel like a lot of the time you know, it's like the SLP that I'm working with is, you know, she is all in, like, you know, ready to go on this device, but then he goes back to his regular classroom and I feel like he just sits there. I don't feel like they know how to engage with him. I didn't know if you had like any type of like resource or anything of just like, you know, because you have a great way of asking questions to get students involved. So I didn't know if you had like a resource, just kind of like a chart of just, hey, here's some good questions to help interact.
Yeah, I know that like I said, the 1-page sheet from Saltillo, I think is a really good thing to give to like staff. And it has a chart that gives more examples of referential versus descriptive questions. So I guess I would just think about like being open-ended. I don't know. I don't think I have a great answer for that because it definitely takes practice. Like you can see the book report thing that I made a few years ago. I was like, oh, those are referential questions. So I think it does take practice, but like challenging people to say, like, ask a question that can be answered on the device, or ask a question that could have multiple answers. And try to think about it like that. And staff could maybe practice together. And if you have time for like professional development of like, all right, let's focus on, we're going to talk about our weekends, but ask only open-ended descriptive questions.
Well, thank you. Does anybody else have any questions for Sarah before we have her get off?
Let's see if I can find this really quick. Yeah, never knew Canva could do so much. You have to explore Canva. It is amazing. I had a hard time finding this one pager the last time I looked for it, so I meant to link it. So I'm sorry I didn't. Yes, thank you, everyone. Yeah, there's my contact if you need anything. But thank you, everyone, for coming.